Hello and welcome to preparing for chapter 3 and IRB. Let's go ahead and get started. So chapter 3 and IRB are a really fun place to begin. Some people choose to do chapter 3 before chapter 2, others choose to do it after chapter 2. That's up to you and your chair to see what you want to do. Sometimes you just need a break from a certain chapter, and chapter 3 is very technical, and it also gives a very good idea as to the process of your whole study. This is the step-by-step of what you will be doing. So every time in the checklist before every chapter, it's going to have you review the purpose of your study, and then it's going to ask you to give a summary of what you're going to cover in chapter 3. So first on chapter 3, let's talk about the research design and rationale. So you will state your research question as listed previously. This is just your specific research question or questions, depending on your study. You're going to talk about the main concept or phenomenon that you're studying. And you will talk about the research tradition that you're using. Are you using phenomenology? Are you using grounded theory? Are you using case study? Are you using a specific kind of case study? All of those things you'll discuss. And you will talk about why you chose that tradition. So this is where you really have to understand your theory as well as what kind of study that you're doing so that you can support and show evidence as to why you chose that specific tradition. Why did you choose an intrinsic single case study? Why did you choose a generic qualitative study? You need to be able to back it up with research. Next, we will be talking about the role of the researcher. What is your role? Are you an observer, an interviewer, a participant, an observer participant? All of those different things. Understand what you are doing in the research so that you can see what your role is going to be within the study. You will need to understand your role in interviewing people. If you have any personal relationships with those people, do you work with them? Do you go to church with them? Do you go to school with them? Are you related to them in any way? You need to find out if there's an imbalance of power. IRB is going to be looking at this. You can't have people accept your study because they feel pressured because of an unbalanced power. You can't have any kind of power imbalance in any way. This could represent bias on their side or on your side. So talk to IRB sooner rather than later if you're questioning whether or not you can use a certain population. If you work for a nonprofit organization and you wanted to use the population within your nonprofit, that can be a problem. They may feel that they can't say no to you. They may feel that they may lose services if they don't participate in a study. It could create bias within your study, and you may be directed in a different way, talk to a different organization with that same population, or another suggestion that IRB may have. But you have to be very, very cautious in who you select and the relationships that you have with them. Next, you have to discuss how researcher bias will be managed. All people come with bias. What are you going to do to ensure that your bias is in check and managed? And you'll also talk about if there are any other ethical issues with your role as a researcher. Have you experienced this phenomenon? What relationships do you have? Are there any other ethical issues regarding the population where you work? All of those different things. Next is methodology. This is the first part of it, participant collection. Think about it from A to Z. What is your population? Where are you going to find them? How are you going to collect your sample? Why did you choose that way? Social media, ads at agencies. Are you going to call them and then send them an ad? How are you going to contact this specific population? Are you going to use the Walden participant pool? If so, then there's steps for that in the IRB process that we can discuss later on. What is your criterion or criteria for how you will select your sample? How will you determine if the participants meet that criteria? Are you going to have a list of certain criteria, and are you going to contact these people? Are they going to contact you? Are you going to ask these questions via email, via text? All of these different things. You have to decide how you're going to find your population and how you're going to whittle it down to the people that qualify. How many participants do you need? My second chair said that a great way, instead of saying I will have 8 participants participate, you can say I will begin with 8 participants. And that leads you into that you can increase that number based on saturation or other reasons. Why did you choose that number? This you need to support with documentation. You need to have journals that show and statements that show that that number of participants is sufficient for this study. You need to describe the relationship between the sample size and saturation. You will need to talk about how the participants will be recruited, contacted, and identified. And again, the same thing, when in doubt, talk to IRB. They have office hours that you can text with them. They have an email that you can send an email and they will get back to you. They have times that they are available to talk to you. The sooner you understand their guidelines, how they function, if what you're trying to do will get approved, the better off you are. You'll know which direction to go in. They can give you ideas as to how to collect or where to collect your sample. You might be able to broaden it based on what they say. So don't be afraid to talk to IRB. Next is instrumentation. What data collection are you using? Is there an instrument? Are you doing interviews? Are you collecting documents? Are you using photographs? Are you doing a quantitative scale to collect your data? So you'll have to think about all of these different things. Did you develop your own instrument? Did you create your own questions? You create your own questions, which I know a lot of us do. You'll have to talk about how you created those questions, where they came from, how they are credible. Did you ground them in your theory? Did you see these questions used in other studies? Why did you choose these questions, and how do they relate to your study and to your theory? And you will also have to establish validity with all of that. So looking at the data analysis plan, sorry, let me move this over here. Looking at the data analysis plan, how, again, are you collecting the data? Are you doing audio recording phone calls? Are you doing video recording? Are you doing interviews? Are you doing just regular phone calls? All of these different things, you'll have to think about how you want to collect the data. Are you collecting it via email, via survey? All of the options, you'll have to really, really whittle it down and decide what you need to do. How are you going to code the data for qualitative studies? What are the steps for coding? Go through A to Z. How are you going to collect it? Where are you going to put it? How are you going to move from codes to categories to themes? Are you going to be using thematic analysis or aggregate analysis? Are you using next a program? Are you using in vivo, Word, Excel, Deduce? There are so many programs that can help you with your data. Do you want to use one? Do you not want to use one? That's something to think about along the way. Also, you need to think about discrepant cases. Look up discrepant cases to understand exactly what those are, but these are going to be the off-the-wall ones. I had a couple discrepant cases within my study because the themes did not, a few of the themes that were created did not personally apply to some of the participants, whether it was a theme involved being married and one person was not married, or the person stated that their opinion on a certain matter, their attitude on a certain matter, was based not on what the study was about, but on something that had happened previously in their life. That was a discrepant case for me. So understand how you're going to treat those discrepant cases as a whole, if everything that they say is just not applicable, or how you're going to treat the discrepant cases for a certain question that one participant may be a discrepant case on one specific question that you ask them. Okay, next is run through it. This chapter is your guide for data collection process. Make sure it is what you want to need. So I highly recommend that you make an interview protocol and you make an outline. This will take you, again, same phrase, from A to Z. Everything from the moment that you get IRB approval And you have to say, okay, I'm going to create an ad. I'm going to place this ad in this place, this place, and this place. I'm going to contact this place, this place, this place. Think it all out like a recipe and make sure that you're not missing any steps. Talk to someone about it. Talk to someone in your program. Talk to someone who can ask questions and say, well, what about this? What are you going to do if this happens? How are you going to contact these people? Think about it. Writing it down will help ensure that you're not missing anything and that you've accounted for all possibilities. This is a short example of my interview protocol. It discussed the purpose of my study because you always want to make sure that everything that you're doing is focused on the purpose of your study. It talked about my population, how I was going to collect the data, how I was going to contact them, the participant contact method, how I was going to contact them. Mine was through text, social media, and email. And then it talked about if they qualify, then what do I do? Do I send an email? Do I call them? How do you set up that part? If they don't qualify, then what are you going to do? So you have to go through all of these different scenarios to determine how this study will go. You can talk about the interviews or the data collection method. I sent a summary of the interview to my participants, which was pretty much just taking each question that they asked and summarizing it into letter format so that they could go through and read it and see how I interpreted the interview, what things I got from them, and they were able to approve it or make changes saying, I don't think that you understood this correctly, or they could say, yep, you hit the nail on the head, everything that you said is accurate. Then I went through how I was going to analyze the data, and then finally I send a summary of the study to the participants so that they can see how it all played out. But having these little check boxes, having it all written down helps you see exactly how the process is going to go. All right, for quantitative, who developed the instrument? Where and when has it been used? How and why is it appropriate? Sorry, that's supposed to be how will you establish validity? And is there any context or cultural bias in using this instrument? Quantitative is a lot more straightforward in what they have, and they have their guidelines, and they have all of these things already. You just have to do the research in order to prove the validity and why this measure is appropriate. Okay, again, somewhat back to qualitative. Generalities and backups. I learned this through speaking with IRB. When you're thinking about how to collect your sample, you can be more broad than what you think you can. So for example, you can say, I will be using social media to collect my participation sample. Or if you want to be specific, you can say, I will be using Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to collect participants. But here's the thing, you don't want to box yourself in. If you can use social media as a general realm, then don't hit yourself only on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. There may be other social medias that pop up before your study is approved, and you can include those if you say a generality of social media. And IRB, again, you can talk to them. It's a lot easier to make generalities and cut it down in your next chapters and say, I didn't end up needing Instagram because I fulfilled everything within Facebook. Or you may not have to list where your participation comes from as long as you collect it. The same for data. Are you collecting data? Are you using Zoom? Are you using FaceTime, face-to-face? Are you using Tape-a-Call or Microsoft Teams? Again, you can have backups. You can say that I'm collecting data via audio-visual recorder, and you don't have to list the specific places. Or you can have backups and say, I'm going to use this program or in this program, but if these don't work, then I'm going to have this program as my backup. You want to make sure that your participants have accessibility to whatever program that you're using. So if they don't have Zoom, then you want to have a backup that you can call them on an audio line. Or if there's technical issues and they all of a sudden the internet isn't that great, maybe it's better to call on an audio line than it is to do a video call. The same for programs for analyzing data. You can say that you're going to use in vivo to help analyze the data in Excel. If you do, that's great. Again, have a backup. Say I'm planning to use in vivo for data analysis. If this program is not functioning properly, if it's not fulfilling the needs, then I'm going to use X, Y, and Z. Make sure you always have something to back you up because problems do occur, whether it's technical issues or money issues for buying a program, whatever it may be. Do your research before, but have a backup. I used Deduce for my study, but I also stated that I would use Word and Excel. And I'm glad I did because I found that I got more out of my data using Word. I did use Deduce and it was great and helpful, but it was very nice that I had the manual power of using Word, and I discovered themes through both. So have a backup plan and talk to IRB if you're concerned. Issues of trustworthiness. This is very important. So you have to establish credibility. You have to show that you're being truthful, believable, and that your work is approved by the participants. I did this through member checks. I sent the summary of the interviews to the members, to the participants so that they could look at it and say, yes, I agree. You understood my opinion. You can do this through triangulation, reflexivity. You can do it in a few different ways. So find out what you want to do for your study in order to ensure credibility. Transferability. Who else can this study be applied to? Similar populations, similar fields. Can it be transferred to other people? Is that part of your study? Is that part of the purpose? I did an intrinsic single case study. That's pretty based on the actual case of people that I did. While there is room for transferability, that's not the purpose of the study. The purpose of my study was to understand the attitudes of the people within my specific case. So keep that in mind. Dependability, or in quantitative research, it's called reliability. So why are you and this study dependable? What are you doing to ensure that you followed the interview protocol, that you remained unbiased, that you're following the rules of research? Go over it. Did you keep a journal? Did you use an audit trail? Again, reflexivity, triangulation, all of these different things you can use to show that your work is dependable. And this goes right into confirmability, that the study can be replicated. If somebody else, another researcher, wanted to duplicate your study, they should have everything A to Z to complete the study just as you did. And they should have the credibility, transferability, dependability, all of those things matter. They can copy everything you did and come up with similar or maybe even not similar results, depending on what the study is. If another person did a case study within my same population, they may come up with different results than I did, but they would have everything within the study A to Z of how it was completed and how the analyses were done. The summary and the checklist. So again, at the end of each chapter, you're going to have this. You're going to have what were the main points of the chapter, what did you cover? You're going to talk about what's coming in the next chapter, and to do that, use the checklist. It has all the bullet points of exactly what the headings are going to be. You don't have to go into great detail. You can use the headings as your guide to talk about what's coming next. The checklist is required at the end of the proposal stage as well as the final stage. So after you complete chapter 3, you will have to go through your paper and copy and paste certain requirements. Everything that was listed in that checklist, you will have to find that information in your document and transfer it over to show that that requirement has been fulfilled. And you'll have to list what page number it's on as well. So be ready for that. That's why you have to use the checklist. It's going to make this process much more bearable if you have it all in order and you have fulfilled all of those marks. Okay. Don't transfer things to your checklist too soon. I recommend that you get feedback from your chairs because you're going to have to make edits, you're going to have to make changes, and so you don't want to have to correct your paper and then go back and correct your checklist. That's going to create more work for you, as well as if whole sections need to be added or omitted, it's going to change the page numbers that you put in the checklist. So wait until the very end to put things into the checklist form. All right, this is a really important part to clean up your APA. Make sure your Pilcrow symbol is on. I showed you how to do that after chapter 1. So that's very important. It's going to check your spaces. It's going to check your page breaks, your headings. All of those different things are going to be very important when you turn in your proposal. Little things like APA requires that you say although and not while. So you better search your document for all the times you say while and switch it to although. Active voice, which we talked about in chapter 1, making sure that you have all of those in order. Check your hyphenated words. A great place to start is the dictionary. Just go type in a word online, and many of them will show you that they have been condensed down from hyphenated. Like email used to be hyphenated, but once it becomes more popular, more used, a lot of times the hyphen is eliminated. So email, database, iPhone, all of those things, make sure you have them written correctly in your proposal. And then things like self-reflection, that does have a hyphenation. So check your APA manual and check online to make sure that your spellings are correct. Again, avoid adverbs and adjectives. This is not a novel. This is a dissertation, which moves right into a neutral scholarly tone. I do not need to know your opinion in your paper. Your opinion should not shine through. I should not know how you feel about certain things. It should be factual and neutral in tone. Avoid bias statements. Be very careful with this. I know that you feel strongly about your topic, so be careful how you state things. Make sure that it doesn't feel biased. Anthropomorphism, check for that. Objects can't feel. So look for that when you're talking about studies. Look for that in anything. Make sure that you have feeling words shouldn't really be in there anyway, because that shows bias. That is not a scholarly tone. So eliminate all of the feeling words and make sure that no inanimate objects are feeling something. Studies do not feel things. Make sure that when you are talking about individuals, you say individuals who, blah, 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 and not individuals that, blah, blah, blah. That's a little one that they'll catch along the way. Use Grammarly within Word to help you find any other errors. Make sure you're checking your sources using ReciteWorks or Crossref, and that will help you to make sure that all of your sources are listed in the paper as well as in your reference section, vice versa, and it will help you ensure that you reference them correctly with the right year, you didn't spell anyone's name wrong, all of those different things. You didn't misspell the journal or miss a period or any issues that can come from your reference section. Check your formatting. If you have the Pilcrow symbol on, you shouldn't have too many issues with formatting. And then what you're going to do is you're going to update and check your table of contents. So to do this, you will go to your table of contents. I'm speaking for, I do not have a Mac, so I cannot tell you how to do it on Apple computer, but for Microsoft, you go to your table of contents, you're going to right click on the margin and it will say update fields. You will click on update fields and then it will say you want to click on update all fields. And that will automatically populate all of the headings that you have into your table of contents. And I will do a video on how to add headings into your paper to make sure that they get formatted in the correct place on your table of contents, because you can't just add a heading. You have to tag them in APA formatting so that it is tied to the table of contents. So I can do that one later and show you how to update your table of contents too. Okay, I've gotten the question whether or not to submit chapter by chapter or submit the whole proposal as one. The things about submitting chapter by chapter, you'll catch the little mistakes, you'll catch alignment issues early on, and you'll learn APA from corrections in chapter 1, as well as if you submit chapter by chapter by chapter, when you turn in your whole proposal, you're going to have more edits on all of the chapters. So it's good and bad. You'll catch things faster, but you'll probably do more edits overall. If you submit the whole proposal, you'll have one set of corrections and you won't be waiting for feedback. But if you have issues in your paper, it's not going to be fun to have to shift all of those in all of the chapters. So think about what works for you. Ask your chairs what they prefer. I know some of the chairs that I've talked to prefer chapter by chapter because they can correct those alignment issues. They can make sure that you're not missing big chunks of things. And it's good to make sure that everything is aligned and makes sense and is there, instead of having all of those issues at the very end. IRB. Okay, so now that you are completed with your chapter 3, you have to think about IRB. IRB is there to protect the rights and welfare of humans participating as subjects in research. So the school is covering themselves from any liabilities. They want to make sure that you are not taking advantage of people. They have to make sure that their health and wellness is first and foremost. So here are some things that I've learned from IRB. You can only audio record interviews. You cannot video record. So while you can use Zoom, while you can use video conferencing, you can only audio record them. You cannot video record your interviews. Make sure that you understand your population. Are they vulnerable and are they accessible? If you want to interview abused women, if you want to interview children, if you want to interview prison inmates, these are all considered vulnerable populations. Can you reach them? Are you allowed to reach them? Who do you have to talk to in order to do that? IRB is going to have a lot more procedures and a lot more paperwork if you want to interview any kind of vulnerable population. And you will have to show that you are going through all of the steps to ensure that their rights and welfare are protected. Okay. Ensure that your contact with the participants is professional and limits liability on the university. That goes right along with the population. I did learn that IRB wants you to send a 1 to 2 page summary of the results to the participants. If you have their email, if you have their contact information in any way, there's no reason why you cannot send the results of the study to the participant. So that needs to be part of your plan. Average turnaround for IRB approval is 2 to 3 times. So that takes 4 to 6 weeks. There are forms that you have to fill out and send into IRB. It's basically like a checklist or a grid. You fill it all out in one section. They send it back with notes in the next section. You have to fix it and send it back. So something that is going to help with this is you can submit preliminary IRB materials while you're in URR review so that they can give you that feedback while you're still waiting for approval from your chairs. And that way, when you formally submit it, you'll have the notes already there. The other thing that you can do is ask your friends who have already gone through IRB for a copy of their documents, because you can look at what they did and the feedback that IRB gave and apply it to your study now. So you can fix your proposal. You can do everything that you need to do in Chapter 3 to adjust your method in order to comply with IRB's regulations. And again, you can talk to IRB. Okay, while you're waiting for Chapter 3 to be approved, for your whole proposal to be approved, there's a lot of things that you can do, because from the time that you get approved on your study, then you're going to have to wait to set up your oral defense with your committee, and that takes time. So while you are in waiting for that, you can get organized, think about how you're going to perform your study, get everything in order, get your ad created, get your emails formatted and saved so that you can copy and paste your correspondence emails with your participants. Everything after Chapter 3, you're going to have to go back and put in past tense. So in Chapter 3, when you say, I will be recruiting, blah, 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 you're going to have to go back and say, I recruited, blah, blah, blah. So that's something that you can do while you're waiting. Practice interviewing yourself. You cannot practice your interview on other people. Again, that's something you can talk to IRB about. They allowed that I could share my questions with someone within the population that I knew, but I was not allowed to interview them or ask them. I could ask about the questions for clarification purposes via email or something like that. But it's great to practice interviewing yourself in the mirror. Make sure that you have an understanding of your questions. Make sure that they're the questions that really, really are going to help you understand and learn the answer, your research question. Get your emails prepped, take a break. This is exhausting. Sometimes you just do need to take a few days or a week to decompress and prepare for the next step, because the next stages are busy. And you can also put together your slideshow. For your oral presentation, you will be using the Walden template, and you will have to create a slideshow that goes through your chapters 1 through 3. So you need to put that together so that you are prepared to present that to your committee. All right, and then the fun can begin. Chapter 3 is the foundation of everything that you're going to do in this study. It walks you through A to Z, just like a recipe, everything that you're going to be doing once you get approved. So make sure that it's in order. Make sure that it has everything that you need. IRB is the clearance to begin the study, and then everything is up to you. After this point, it's all on you. You don't have any more waiting to do. You can go, you can recruit your participants, you can start your study, and you need to make sure that, again, you're familiar with your chapter 3 because you need to follow that precisely in order to ensure credibility and all of those different things. So hopefully you have a good idea as to how chapter 3 will work. It's a great foundation and it gives you what you need to do in order to succeed as a researcher. Lean on your chair, find peers, find friends, talk to them, share with them, share your ads of how you're what you're going to recruit. Check the terminology that they use. All of those different things. It helps to have people on your side, people that are there to help you, to make this an easier process. We're all learning. None of us really know what we're doing, so lean on each other to help each other through this process. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of what to expect in chapter 3, as well as how to prepare for IRB. Have a good day.